everyone. The full board is here today, and does anyone know if Mayor Payne is coming?
We don't know.
The Mayor Pro Tem's here, so we're...
It's an unknown, but Sheila's here, so carry on. Right. Just as a point of personal privilege, I'd like to thank Blair and his folks that during the holidays, we're all off and happy, and your folks are manning the lines and everything, so please pass that along to your crew.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We are called to order when I recognize all of the board being present. We have a quorum. Is there any public comment? No. Matt's shaking his head, so that's a no. We're now going to go into executive session, and let me get the script that Jenny has for me. We are now recessing into executive session in accordance with Article 1, VTCA Government Code 5510.086 on competitive matters of LP&L. 2, VTCA Government Code 551.071, seeking advice of and consultation with LPL's attorneys on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Chapter 551 of the Government Code, and seeking advice of its attorneys about pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers. Ms. Patterson.
Thank you. City Council will hold an executive session today for the purpose of consulting with the city staff regarding competitive matters of the public power utilities under Section 551.086 of the Texas Government Code, and pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers, and hold consultation with attorneys under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code.
We are now adjourned. We are now both adjourned into executive session, and second floor, is that where we're going?
Yep.
Thank you. It is now 12:55, and we'll call the board back into open session. And the first order of business, number 5, is to approve the minutes from the regular Electric Utility Board meeting on December 19th. It's been moved. Second. Is there a second? Second. Are there any additions or corrections? I have one correction to the minutes. My name is misspelled. S-T-R, it should be S-T-A at the end of those minutes, Beatrice. That's so. One correction, I really did read the minutes. Are there any other additions? All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes with that one correction of December 19th, 2022, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. It's 9-0 to approve with the changes. Number 6, Mr. Ivey.
Happy New Year, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm going to keep this short in the interest of time because a lot of the things that I might talk about up here or otherwise are going to be, we got presentations on these things. We have before the Public Utility Commission our pro forma tariff. This is the document that sets forth the rules for retail electric providers doing business with us. We've never had this kind of thing before because we've never had to worry about retail electric providers before, right? So, but now that we do, or about to anyway, we've got to have this document that is a fair governance for how the rules of conduct and whatnot between us. This body and the City Council will still maintain the right and the jurisdiction to set our rates, but the actual terms and conditions for how the processes work related to the market are going to be subject to the Public Utility Commission. So that's a little bit new, but we're hoping that that's going to be in for approval. It's probably going to be February, to be honest, maybe mid-February, but we worked really hard to get that pushed through the stakeholders groups on behalf of the Public Utilities Commission. And so we don't believe that there's going to be any heartache to get that pushed through pretty quick. So we'll have that in time to be able to get our systems and everything set up and working appropriately. And then in other news, we are going to move the lobby group back over to the business office next door. Clint promised me, and he wrote it in blood, that it was going to be the 23rd that we would make that move. So if this doesn't happen, I want you to help me to get on Clint about that. But we believe that we had to move those over for one reason or another, and it's worked out pretty well, actually. But we think we've got the issues with the flooding in that building pretty much contained. There's still some leaks and stuff we have to deal with periodically, but nothing like the knee-deep to waist-deep stuff that they saw before. So we believe it's a better, safe environment, and it's going to be a better location for everybody. And the city administration is fully on board with us on that.
Kiosks remain.
Are we going to keep a kiosk, Clint?
Kiosks will remain, they'll be moved over to the lobby of the UCS.
Okay, but we're not going to keep one here, though, right? Okay.
They did not want to keep one.
Yeah. Yeah, all of those will go next door. Clint and his group have made good headway. So part of the the survey that we did for the strategic retreat we did previously contained concerns that people had about access into the parking lot at night. Primarily, there wasn't good lighting and video cameras and stuff like that. I think we've fairly fixed, if not all of it, most of it at least, and we'll continue to address any concerns as those come along. Those are valid, and something that we need to do about it. So we worked with the city staff to get some lights put up out there, and I think it's in a lot better shape than it was, certainly. Okay? Unless there's any other questions for me directly, I will turn it over to Chris so we can talk about the upcoming strategic retreat. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Strategic planning, we would like it to be continuous and not just once every year, every 5 years, every 3 years. So continuing on your calendars, hopefully you have February the 13th marked as our next strategic planning meeting, where we really value your input as our leadership. And I did not have anything in the board book. Instead, we have a handout for you today. And in this handout, you'll be familiar with the first couple of pages. The new board members, you might not have seen this before, but this is where we left the last strategic planning meeting, and it is a PowerPoint presentation that Joel presented called LP&L Forward. And there's some slides that we printed here that may prompt some thinking about some things that we're wanting you to consider and help us with in strategic planning going forward. And then right after that PowerPoint presentation, there is a copy of the City of Lubbock Charter that specifically deals with the Electric Utility Board. And hopefully you've all seen that before. We've highlighted some areas that'll kind of lead into some questions that we have that we're going to consider at the strategic planning retreat. And then following the Lubbock City Charter Electric Utility Board provision, you'll find several City of Lubbock ordinances that pertain specifically to Lubbock Power and Light and the governance structure and some of the questions that we're going to try to work through during the next strategic planning session. We've highlighted some areas there that kind of lead into the last part of the handout that I gave you, and it's our 3 questions. These 3 questions deal with some areas with the charter, with the ordinances that we need to look at. There may be some gray areas. There may be some areas that we need to look at possibly changing in the ordinance that you might want to consider dealing with revenue disbursement, specifically with an acronym called GRR. And you'll see that, and we've highlighted some of those. But we just wanted to give this to you as a handout instead of in your board book. So you might take a look at it just as we prepare for the next meeting on February the 13th. Any questions?
Where is that meeting?
Civic Center.
Civic Center. Yes, sir. Upstairs in your conference room, 2nd floor, I believe.
In the terrace suite upstairs.
Yes, ma'am.
On February 13th, beginning at 10 o'clock.
10 to 2.
10 to 2.
Yeah, you'll send a calendar, please.
Yes, ma'am. Invite will be coming shortly.
Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Sims? Just make sure council members also get this.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Reed, is that you, Joel, or Matt?
That's me one more time. And Matt's available to address any questions that might come up as well. We trotted him up here last time, so his feet are about worn out. I just want to talk for a little bit, Madam Chair, about market redesign, kind of give just a quick update. There hasn't been just a lot of movement on this. So recall, this is an effort by the Public Utilities Commission and by the state legislature, by ERCOT, in order to shore up and prevent what happened with Winter Storm Uri. We had two phases that we were considering. Phase one was mostly weatherization of our generators, so that if they were supposed to be running, that they would run in the event of really cold weather event. That has been done. We've moved on from that. We're talking about phase two now, what is the long-term outlook for ERCOT in order to have more reliable dispatchable generators that can be available for situations like that. That's one of the things that the Public Utilities Commission is still deliberating and considering. They seem to be leaning towards a performance credit-based mechanism, it's a pretty fancy phrase for making sure that we have enough generation capacity available to be able to run the system during those extreme periods. If you recall, I mentioned that we were part of a coalition that filed an alternative proposal that uses ancillary services that would reward these same types of generators, but it would also include battery systems, for example. But it would reward those generators for being more available and being able to start up and get online in 2 hours and whatnot. So there's some alternatives that are floating out there. I know that the Senate seems to be leaning towards a more capacity type market, and they seem to understand that there's going to be costs associated with that. If you do something different than what you've really created through a very efficient process, it will probably cost you more money to do that. And I believe that we're looking at something like that. It's probably going to be valid that we take some steps, though, because the reliability and the integrity of the grid needs to be first and foremost in everyone's minds. There's no answers, no solutions yet, but as those things come of age, I'll keep bringing these before you so you'll know where we're at also. Senator Perry is heavily involved with this, by the way, doing a very good job looking out for everyone's interests, so I want to commend him for that.
Are there any questions? By Mr. Ivy? Do we know, Mr. Ivy, what, we left SPP because it was a capacity, and ERCOT is not right now. What kind of cost, what would that add? Unknowable right now.
I'm hesitant to start tossing numbers out because we don't know what they're going to do. It could be, relatively more expensive, or it could be extremely more expensive in the billions and billions of dollars, like tens of billions of dollars. It just depends on what they wind up wanting to do. So, but you're also talking about a really large customer base that gets spread out between. So does that work out to be that much money, and is that money worth it for the peace of mind? I mean, if we all had to pay $5 extra a month in order for that peace of mind, would that be okay with everyone? Probably would. So I don't know yet, and I'm afraid to give you a number. I hope you understand that, because I would be wrong the first time I said one. Okay. All right. Thank you, y'all. Luke?
Thank you, Luke. And what page is that on? In our book.
Oh, here we go. It's in the
Page 19.
presentation. Good afternoon. I'm going to give you an update on our projects that we're currently in progress with to move our remaining 30% of load. We're kind of in the midst of a lot of construction right now. So just going to give you an update on where everything stands. So I was going to start with the procurement and getting all the material that we need. As you know, this has been a challenge for us with the supply chain crisis that we've had. You can see we're starting to fill in some of our material delivered column with some 100% numbers, which I'm very happy to see, and I hope that you are too. There are some that are remaining, and I'm going to speak to some of the key items that have yet to arrive, but we still do feel good about meeting our timelines. As we've discussed before, especially with the substation projects, a lot of this material shows up at certain phases in the construction cycle, and so it won't arrive until we're doing that piece of the construction. So everything looks to be on track, and I'll speak to some specific items. On the right-hand column, you can also see the dollar amounts for what's remaining to be spent on material that we've received. So this is a schedule that shows the timelines for where we're at on all of our feeder projects. And there's a lot of detail here, but if you'll notice the red line on the right-hand side, that's June 1st. So that's where we need to get to. And the green thin line, that's where we're at today. The light orange colored bars are the construction phase of these projects. And you can see that they all complete before we get to that red line, which is our goal. So all of our projects are on pace to complete construction. A couple of things that you'll notice is the blue line, which is the procurement for each of the feeder projects. It goes past that line, and I was wanting to just point to that to show that there are issues that we continue to come across. This one specifically concerns ductile iron poles. So we cut a PO back in September, and we were expecting to receive these ductile iron poles March 7th. And then we've received notification that we're not going to receive these poles until June 20th. So obviously that's a problem. We're working through solutions to go ahead and move that procurement line back in front of our construction schedule. We do have solutions that we're looking at, and this isn't unlike other problems that we've faced as we've gone through this process. It's just one that's happening right now. So we're confident that we'll be able to find a solution to help us with that, whether that's redesign or use a different kind of pole or maybe temporary wood poles. There's things that we can do to adjust to make sure that we hit our deadline there. This is our schedule for the substation projects. What you'll notice is that there's 4 substations. 2 of those, Co-op and Thompson, have been complete. They've been commissioned. They're ready to energize as soon as we have the feeder projects built to them. The Vicksburg and McDonald substations are currently under construction. If you drive down Marcia Sharp, you can see all the activity happening at our Vicksburg substation. The green line here, that's the key line. That's our completion activity. So once those green lines are complete, we can actually use and energize those substations. Vicksburg is going to be running the closest to our deadline, but we're still confident that we'll be able to have that energized before June 1st. So there are a couple of small items as far as the substations go that we have some concerns with material-wise. A couple of those things are T-bodies, which are connections that we connect our underground cable to our overhead equipment, bus pipe, and potential transformers. Similar to the ductile iron poles, we're working through solutions, and there's nothing at this time that makes us think we won't be able to energize these substations before our deadline. So this is where our...
Is that one, if you'll go back to that other one, that is not in our book, is that correct?
That's correct. I don't believe the schedules were included in the book.
If you can make sure those 2 pages are printed so board members can have those.
Okay.
Because those are very, very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Be sure and do that. And then the last slide is where we're at on our capital projects that these projects fall under. You can see that we're set to fall within our budget. We do have quite a bit that's encumbered currently, and quite a bit that's still forecasted, especially on our feeder projects. Most of the money has been encumbered for the substations, but a lot of it is still in progress for the distribution feeders. And that's what I had to present. Are there any questions?
Just one question on the Vicksburg, you're at 43%.
Yes.
That's the one that you're probably most concerned about getting everything in.
You would think that, but it's not actually my biggest concern. It's just later in the schedule, so less of those big ticket items have arrived because they have to arrive at a certain time during the construction phase. We have received the biggest items, which are the transformers. They're on site. So that will really fill in over the next 2 months. Mhm. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Number 10 on the agenda, is that you, Harvey?
Yes, it is. So on page, let me see if I can get. So on page 15 of your board book, you get a set of slides that talk about, I'm just trying to bridge time while I get this up there, that give metrics on the operational performance of LP&L. And so what we were looking to do is to give you, is to kind of give another report that gives additional metrics and some metrics that are not included in that. They're really going to start to tell the story that are going to be especially pertinent as we move into retail competition and even post-retail competition. And I was going to show you a picture of these. We've got about 9 slides here, so not too much, actually 8 slides of stats. First one's going to be our safety record. That's not been a stat that's been thrown out there too much. And we wanted to start with just showing you a sample of, on page 15 in your board book, what we currently have, and then this is going to be the operational report we would look to start adding to the board report going forward. And this here gives a compare of 2018 through 2022 compare of safety statistics. On the top graph, it's just total number of incidences that have occurred. Down below is the graphic that makes it very specific in terms of what types of activities are going on. Safety is a critical issue for our employees, making sure they go home as in good, if not better condition than when they came to work, and go home safely to be with their families is a critical issue. It's a metric that we need to continue to keep our eyes on and measure to ensure that that continues, and especially for where we're going. And so this is going to be a statistic that's out in front of the board and will continue to be in front of the board. We want to make sure it's out there. We can answer these questions, and what are we doing to ensure the safety of our staff? That's a critical piece. Next stack, I know this seems like a little bit of an eye chart. I'll try to keep it minimal. This gives 6 financial metrics that we want to make sure in front of the board. They give good samples in terms of the financial health of LP&L as we go forward. And they give you sampling of different areas that are really important. So the first one up there, operating ratio, operating ratio, for that and for all of these, we'll show a goal, and that's based off of a American Public Power metric that shows how are we doing compared to really other like utilities like us. So it's not our own self-proclaimed view, it's also how are we doing compared to other industry utilities that are like us. So there's a goal metric there. Then there's our actual performance that we will measure against, and that'll give us a view. And then I have a status there. It's kind of nice if you just see a green. Are we at that goal? Or are we even better than that goal? Is a green. If there's a yellow, if we're close to that goal, but we're actually slightly below, but we're close, and we're in safe territory, but it's not where we want to be, we'll make that a yellow. If it starts to get to an area that starts to hinder or show that we're significantly underperforming on our metrics, we want to highlight that as a red, and we should be coming to you saying, what's the nature of that? What's the driver behind it? And what are we doing about it? And what's the danger? So we don't have any of those reds. We do have a couple of metrics that are going to be long-term. One's going to be a long-term issue that we want to look at with debt. So I'll just kind of quickly walk through those. Operating ratio, that is looking at for every dollar of operating expense, I mean, for every dollar of operating revenue, how much do you have for operating expense? So when it says that our goal there is 0.83, that means for every dollar of revenue, we've got 83 cents of operating expense. As long as that number is equal to or less than 1, that means you're operating in a positive net operating margin. And obviously, the lower the number that goes, the better. Industry standard for a company like ours is 83 cents. We're just below 80 cents. So we're actually monitoring ahead of that metric. That's for the month of November. That's where we're at so far. The current ratio then gives us a balance sheet perspective that says how strong is this utility to cover its debt obligations. So for every dollar that we have in current assets that we have available, we have $2.25. For every dollar of debt that's out there, we have $2.25 of current assets to cover that. So we're actually quite strong. We're actually doing well. Our standard is $2.25 for every dollar of current liability. Right now, we're at 2.13, so we're slightly behind where we would want to be at this point. We have a higher standard for that. That's where we are as of the month of November. This metric will fluctuate as we go. Days cash on hand is a critical thing, and that means for the cash that we've got available, how long or how many days ahead could we pay on our operating budget? And that means, so for our current goal is 90, we are at 88.62, so we're slightly under that, very close to it, but we're slightly under that. Those top 3 metrics, operating ratio and current ratio and days cash, those fluctuate monthly, and there's a lot of dynamic to it because they're income driven. Accounts payable is pretty dynamic, so is days cash. We'll continue to show those on a monthly basis. The bottom 3 metrics are not as dynamic. In other words, they don't flash month to month as much, but they do move over time. And the first one on there is going to be our debt to total assets. So for every dollar how much of our debt compared to our assets, we really are looking for a target of about 50%. So for our total assets, 100, we would have $50 of debt. Is what that would reflect. We're currently at 60, and that's reflective of a lot of borrowing that we've taken out to work on our transmission assets. We do know that we've got good cost recovery for that through our T-cost revenues that have already started to come through. So we've got good, strong ability to service that debt at this point. The next one is our debt service coverage ratio, and that means for every dollar of debt obligation that we've got for our bonds, how much money in free cash do we have available to pay towards that? Our bond covenant says that should be $1.25 of free cash for every dollar of debt obligation. That's in our bond covenant that we legally are obligated to meet. Our standard is 2.25 or $2.25 for every dollar of debt. We're currently at $2.82 of free cash flow for every dollar of debt. So we're in a very strong position to cover and manage our debt. T-cost revenue is a big chunk behind that. The other thing that's nice about T-cost revenue is obviously that's coming not from our ratepayers, but from outside our territory to help us cover that. So that's not a debt burden that is covered by our ratepayers or shouldered by our ratepayers. The final one there is since we were just pulling this together and I didn't have available for this, and we will make this available in the future, and that's what's our current level of reserve cash available compared to our reserve requirement. Obviously, our goal is 100%. We'll put that up there. I know that our budget said that we would be $9.1 million under that number for this budget year. I want to give a periodic reporting of what's our progress on that, so you see that, and that's out in front of the board that shows where are we concerning where we were for budget. So that's what I want to be able to show, and it gives you different cuts of it. So the bottom 3 metrics: debt to total assets, debt service coverage ratio, and reserve. We're going to look to because that doesn't move much month to month. We're going to show that every quarter so you can see the progress of it. So we'll make that available. The next one is looking at our customer energy usage. This is going to be really important because going in, this drives 70% of our activity. So 70% of our expenses and 70% of our revenue is driven on load. And the ability and how much it costs to procure power for that and how much we charge our customers for. This is the big item. Load shows you the dynamic behind that drives it. And what we want to show, and this is an example only, so this isn't a live snap, so just for heads up. This is just looking at month to month, what's happening to our load this year compared to last year. And also, I would like to add in there just a temperature metric in there. What's the average temperature, so you can see maybe underlying cause why that load flashed the way it did. At some point, we'd like to be able to make a distinction between residential and commercial and industrial accounts with some metrics below that. But this is going to be critical now, and it's also going to be critical in a post-retail environment because that's when our revenues are strictly going to be based off of a per kW kilowatt hour basis. So this becomes pertinent not only for now, but even into the future as well. The next one is just looking at our energy delivery reliability statistics. There's 3 different cuts. When an outage occurs, how long does it last? And then the frequency is how often does it happen? How does it affect our customers and how does it affect our system? There's a little bit of a difference there. And the bottom right-hand corner is really important because it's showing you what's causing those outages. And what we're looking at here are not planned outages when you take down a system to make some modifications or some capital builds. You're looking for things that are unscheduled outages. And these are things to deal with, whether it's vegetation, weather, suicide squirrel. You have a number of different things that can pour into that. So those are things to show reliability. Because when we become a transmission and distribution customer, it is this core and center of what we're all about at that point. We're no longer a vertically integrated utility. This is really what we're all about. And we've got to be really good at it. We're good at it now. We need to continue to make that progress. This is an example. I kind of lovingly call it Luke's report. So this will be an area where we could put this on the operational report as well as what's actually shared with the board directly. Procurement lead time, and this touches a little bit on what Luke was looking at. This is a statistic that Felix puts together, and the top one talks about how many days is it left do we have left to receive our material. And I think it's an important graphic to put in front of the board that shows how long does it take us to get the material we need for projects. This is a statistic that has moved dramatically since COVID. Something that would normally take 2 to 3 weeks can take now 6 to 8 weeks or even longer. And what that shows you, those numbers off to the side show procurement for projects. So it really does show you that almost a full third of the equipment you're looking takes greater than 100 days to receive or greater than 3 months to receive, and sometimes longer than that. That has grown over time. We're still in that. Luke expressed some of how that's affecting his projects for final integration. That's a stat that we've got available to us. The other part of it is, even when we say we've got days left to receive, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes, as he explained, you get the call saying it's going to take 100 days, and then you get the call saying it's going to take another 90 days. That's a surprise, and it does cause delays. It does cause delay. And that's assuming you planned ahead, you got everything in as you wanted to, you're ready to go, you've got your Gantt charts, he's got his project management, you know what you're going to do, and then at the last second, you know you're going to get a delay. So you just got to be ready for it. So that just gives you a reflection of how often the surprises are out there and how big they are. So it does show you that about a fourth of it, sometimes you get a days late that can be in excess of 100 days on top of that. So that's just another risk. And that's how you have to look at this is you can point to definitive cases that have occurred, but what this does is it just shows you the unpredictability of when you're going to get materials as they're planned, as you've been told. It's becoming less predictable. So it's just an issue that we need to be aware of. And I wanted to keep that stat in front of the board in terms of So you can see, is this getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it staying the same? It's an important feature to track as we move forward. Then when it comes to our engagement with our customers, we have our outage call activity that's going to be reflected in that outage chart and our reliability. So those two are going to go together. So as we go through this, each of these stats should begin to tell a story that builds and it grows. So outage calls are going to be reflective of how many outages do we have on our duration index, on our frequency index, how long do they last? That's going to reflect itself in our call center. And also in our call center, something that why this is going to become an interesting metric, because as we begin to get closer to the retail market period and more customers become aware that there are now there are due dates and timelines in terms of when they're going to have to make a transition, we're going to expect that that's going to go up. You're going to see more we would anticipate we would see increased call activity, people calling to find out, where can I get information? I don't understand. Who told? I never, it's like there's a lot of activity that's going to go there. Those are live statistics. Down below, there's a customer engagement, and I put example only, and I think I've talked with Clint about this one, and this would be a polling of our customers, that something along the lines that would say, for you, our customer, how comfortable and aware are you that we're going to be going to retail competition? Do you feel like you've got the information that you need? Are you feeling comfortable about this? And I would anticipate that confidence level is going to be very low to start with, because you're just starting on the educational level to become aware of what we need to do. There's been information coming out, but it's not really real until we know that there's a definitive time frame. So for me as a customer, I know that 3 months I have to make a call, or it's going to be made for me about who my retail provider is going to be. I'm not as worried about that a year from now. 3 months from now, I start to get concerned, and then I start making calls. And so this is really going to become a metric that we're going to watch, especially starting in April and in May, that we would look for this for a confidence level that would say, confidence level may not be as high, but we would anticipate as information is out, communication is out, as we engage our customers, that confidence would increase as we move into it. I don't know that we'll ever reach 100%, but it'll just show you how are our customers feeling about our movement into retail competition. And then finally, this is the last one, and this follows right on top of it, that shows you, and these are stats from Matt, in terms of how often and what is our level of engagement with our customers to get information out there, and how often are our customers looking and doing page views on the information that we put out there and make available to them. And that is the report that we would want in front of you. So any questions on that?
Are there any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do.
Yes? Oh.
Going back to your injury report, showed that,
Here, let me get back to it real quick. Okay?
all right, your eye, hearing, and respiratory,
Mm-hmm.
at 15 injuries?
Mm-hmm.
What caused the uptick, do you know?
I don't have the reason behind that. I got the statistic. I don't have that information. It's the first thing that jumps out, though.
Yes.
It's like it's 10000. Was there an event? We can have follow up on that. But just as we're starting to put this out, it's like it just jumps out at you like, what was that? Absent that, you would probably be more in a normal, I think, too high of a level. But we don't want it. Our goal here is 0. But obviously something occurred and something happened with that. So it's an excellent question, Dr. Ramirez.
All right, thank you.
Dr.
Clint, did you
I'm
have
sorry.
something?
I'll just answer real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
A lot of that was when we were in the old building over there because of the flood. They started demoing that building, and it caused a lot of dust and things going on at that time.
Okay.
That's where you get the respiratory was cause of that building, and we had
Thank
employees
you.
down on the bottom floor. So that was the cause.
Great, thank you so much, Clint.
Okay, so now we have protocols to follow when we do things like that?
Well, we're not, that building's gone. We're over here in this one now, so hopefully we're not gonna have anything like that. But that's a good question, and we will take a look at that and make sure that we do have everything followed up on that.
Great. And that's the beauty of putting this report out in front of the board, to get that information out. So thank you so much.
Harvey, so
Yes.
in the next board book, these will be the pages we will see,
Correct.
and they'll be the actuals.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So the other will go away that we've got in the board book right now. These will replace.
Correct. This will replace that. And before the board, we want to put meaningful metrics in front of you that bring up these types of issues. So the fact you're asking questions is really good. So if there's a metric in there that you would really like to see, that if it was in the prior one, that you would like to see in the new one, please let us know, and we'll make sure that that's in there as well.
Right, I think that's an important part. If any board member would like to see something in addition, get with Harvey on that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Number 11, is that Stacy?
Casey? Yes, ma'am.
And what page?
How are y'all today? All right, I'll just be going over our budget to actuals for November. So we're supposed to be about 17% of our budget as of November. You can see that in our hold harmless payment and our T-cost revenues, we are meeting budget. In our charges for services, we're at 12% of our budget, and that is going to be driven by our over collection. So if we took that negative 12 million out, we would be right at the 17% that we're looking for. But that's going to be offset also by us being under budget on our purchase power costs. So for the month of November, in our charges for services and our total operating revenues, we were $3.5 million under budget. But in our expenses, we were $5.5 million under budget. So overall, for our operating revenue, we came in at $2 million over budget for November. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions from Stacy? Nope, everybody's quiet. Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
Madam Chair, I move that we refer agenda item 12 concerning purchasing procedures found on pages 20 through 79 to the Finance Committee for further review and report back to the Executive Committee and the Board.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries 9-0. Number 13, on page 80, we have the committees. Several of you expressed interest in some and not some, so if you would look on page 80 and see if those are acceptable to you. The technical committee will be chaired by Mr. Harville with Mr. Ramirez and Mr. Davis as the liaison. The Financial Review Committee, Dan Wilson will be chair, Dan Odom a member, and Eddie Schultz, the officer liaison. Human Resources Committee, chair will be Eddie Schultz, Dan Wilson, Lewis Harville, and I'll be the officer liaison. And please note the Helping Hand Education Committee, it used to be Project Helping Hand, but since this will be going away, we think that this committee, and Mr. Fields has agreed to chair it, can be helpful in the education and work with UMAT a lot on the way we know things we can help the public with and things we can't do that the retail providers will do. So this committee will be working a great deal with UMAT. Ms. Gambles will be on that, Mr. Ramirez, and Mr. Davis will be officer liaison. Are there any changes or scramble y'all want to change on these committees? If not, they shall be approved. The next thing on page 81, in March, we need to consider changing our board meeting. And what is the pleasure of the board? Either, I think that's Monday the 20th, Wednesday, March 22nd, or Friday, March 24th.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
apologies for the interruption. Can you go back to 13 with a motion, second vote for minutes of action purposes?
I'll make a motion on item 13 for those committees to be approved as presented on page 80.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenny. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries 9-0. Thank you, Mr. Odom. And then number 14, on the dates, possible dates for the March meeting. Does anybody have any preference or some date that just absolutely won't work?
When is spring break?
I don't know when spring break is.
13.
The 13th or the 17th?
So it's either a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday of that week. You provide what, which one? Not a Wednesday. Here, not a Wednesday.
Monday's fine for me.
Will Monday, the 20th work for everybody?
Works
Dan,
for
will
me.
that work for
Monday
you?
works.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to change that meeting to be Monday, March 20th, 2023. Is there a motion? It's been motioned and seconded to have the March meeting on March 20th, which is a Monday this year. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Madam Chairman, could we get an invite too, please?
Yes, could you make sure that that's sent out as a reminder and take the other one off, please? The next item is the consent item, and I'm going to ask for number 22 to be pulled from the consent document to the regular, pull that off the consent item. Is there any other item that members would like to be pulled from the consent? Okay, just number 22. On the consent items of 15 through 21, do I hear a motion to accept those?
I move to accept consent items as you stated.
15 through 21, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to approve items 15 through 21 on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Then number 22 is separate.
Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from that agenda item for potential conflict of interest.
Thank you if you want to exit the arena. If the minutes will reflect his abstention and leaving, please, Jenny. Number 22 is consideration of a ratifying a resolution with Park Hill Smith and Cooper. I think it was a year contract, as I understood, and we're ratifying it because it was over, January 15th. We missed it by a couple of days. So this is simply to provide the engineering expertise. Is there a motion to approve that? Move. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve item number 22. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. 8-0, one abstention. And if there are no objections to the adjournment, we'll adjourn for the day. Thank you.